Hey, what's up, guys? Chad Hermansen here with Mental Edge Training Coach. Today, I'm going to be talking with McKay Christensen. McKay is a former first-round draft pick in 1994 by the California Angels. That's right. Before they were the Anaheim or Los Angeles Angels, they used to be the California Angels. So he was a first-round pick in 1994 by them, but opted to go on an LDS Mormon mission, and he was still drafted as the sixth overall pick by the Angels. So we're going to hear about his story, what he did on his mission, his life, his adversity that he's gone through, and how the mental game works for him. So enjoy this conversation with McKay Christensen. McKay, what's up, man? How we doing?
Good. What's up, brother? How are you?
Dude, I'm doing great. We're out here in Vegas. We're almost to April of 21. My kids are finally getting to go back to school. It's been a nightmare. How about your kids out in Utah? Are they in school?
Yeah, we've been so fortunate. Like, I mean, well, when I say that, they've been like kind of on a 50-50 program. They haven't really been out of school almost the entire time. I mean, we've had some form of school going, and they may have been shut down for a month or something, month or two maybe. But Utah has been fantastic. I mean, stayed open. My gym has, for the most part, stayed open the entire. I think it was shut down for maybe 2 to 3 months or something like that.
Okay.
Good here. We're blessed. Utah is relatively open. We're not as good as Florida or maybe even some parts of Texas, but it's been good.
Good. That's awesome. Well, I've been excited to talk to you, and number one, just to catch up because it's been so long. It's been quite a few years since we've actually talked to each other, but we follow each other a little bit on social media. I get to see your family, and beautiful family, I would say that. But you have an amazing story. I was in my intro, I was telling them about you were drafted by the California Angels. So not the Los Angeles Angels, the California Angels in 1995 or 94, excuse me. So I want you to take us all the way back because you were a two-way guy, football and baseball. Did you play basketball?
I did till my sophomore year. I blew my.
Okay, yeah. So you that's part of your story. So take us all the way back to your high school year because you became quite an example for the LDS, the Mormon community, if you will, on kind of following through on what you promised to God type thing. And I don't want to make this a religious podcast by any means, but share your story with us and how the draft, because you went a different route than most people do when they're a first round pick. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long story. I try to condense it as short as possible so I don't waste too much time. But the two are really, I mean, it's interesting because as you get older and you have time to reflect and look back on things, some things you forget and other things become more profound and more meaningful. But one of the things I've also realized is just really how connected, sports and that whole experience was. It has very practical implications on your career, and at least it did for me. And what I mean by that is my decision to serve an LDS mission. But yeah, going back, so I was drafted in the first round. I was the sixth player taken, and was a two-sport athlete, like you said, played football and baseball, and loved both sports. Had scholarship offers to play at ton of schools across the country. Really debating on really which one I should do. But for the most part, I really always wanted to play. Football was my first love, and always wanted to play football and imagine myself playing football in college. But I had just a unique opportunity when I was a senior in high school and was drafted, something that was so unusual. I thought that it was an opportunity that I just couldn't pass up. And so how I came to that basically is when I was a sophomore in high school, I was playing football and baseball and basketball. Playing basketball, dribbling down the court, went to make a jump stop, blew out my knee. The year before, my sophomore year in football, I had a really good season. I started on the varsity team, had 24 touchdowns, I think, that year, and was starting to get attention from colleges and stuff about playing football. blew my knee out, went in to see the doctor, and the doctor was like, look, you know, the chances that you're going to come back from a torn ACL, it's just not, you know, the likelihood that you're going to be able to run and cut and do all the same things that you used to be able to do is, it's just, I mean, we're talking back in the 90s, right?
Yeah, which is asinine now, right? We're like, yeah, you'll be back in 8 months.
Yeah, year-long rehab. I mean, what they go through now is, it's like, this just, science has changed things so much. But so I came out of that meeting with the doctor and I thought, dude, I like, all of my dreams were shot. At that point, I really wanted to go on, like I said, go on to college, play football, play baseball. And that was about the extent of where I was dreaming. I figured I would go on, you know, a professional in some other field. So I remember coming home, and this is the part where it kind of, it overlaps into, you know, my religious experience and my faith. But I remember coming home I was brokenhearted, frankly. My knee was swollen and throbbing, and I couldn't sleep that night. And I got down on the side of my bed and began to pray. And in the course of praying, I made a promise. And, you know, 15 years old, a little bit naive but also extremely faith-filled. And so my prayer was that if God would help heal my knee, that I would do anything that he asked of me, and that I would do everything that I could to fulfill what I viewed as his commandments for me, right? Like the things that I thought that he expected me to do in my life. And so to be as moral and good a person as I could possibly be. And of course, you know, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and a lot of that religious affiliation informed my own morality. And so anyway, that was the promise that I made that night. And you know, my dad actually, you know, had a premonition to come down. It was probably 1 a.m. or something. He came down, knocked on my door. He sat down next to me, and I was in tears and, you know, broken up. And he made, basically, in the subsequent days, he made a promise to me that, you know, if I did everything that God asked of me, that the Lord would ratify the blessing or the promise that I had made, and would do for me what I need, you know, in the ways to help. And so anyway, I got up from that and I worked my tail off on rehab. That's always, you know, it was the way that I was raised with the idea that you pray as if everything depends on the Lord, and you work as if everything depends on you. And so I worked my tail off in rehab. And the following year, I was able to play my sophomore and junior years in baseball. I missed my junior year in football. And then my senior year in football, I had a phenomenal year. I led the state in rushing touchdowns. I had 44, which back then was a lot. Nowadays, kids are ripping off like 40 and 50 and 60. It boggles my mind. But led the state back then, and was, you know, California Athlete of the Year. I had a great year in football and in baseball. And then when baseball rolled around, I played really, really well that year, and scouts were coming out about from the time that I was a sophomore. I was actually fortunate because when I was a junior, you probably wouldn't remember Kevin Pickford, but he was a second-round pick out of my.
Remember Kevin? Oh yeah.
Oh, that's Pirates organization. That's right. So he was drafted in the second round. He was a year older than me, and so scouts were already coming to games watching him, and that helped. And so, you know, when I was a senior, eventually, you know, they knew I was LDS. They recognized that you know, there's a potential that I could serve a mission, and yet they you know, were coming to my house, talking to me and saying, look, you're probably going to be taken in the top 5 picks, but if you end up serving a mission, we can't draft you. We can't just like draft you, pay you, and let you bounce for 2 years, right?
Why would we do that, right? That's yeah.
So anyway, I took time to think about it, and you know, remembered when I was a sophomore and promised that I had, and I knew then that part of that promise was that I wanted to serve a mission for our church. And for those who don't know what that is, for LDS kids, you basically you get called, you turn in papers, you get called to go anywhere in the world. You don't get a pick. They tell you where you're going to go, and you go out for 2 years and you do everything that you can to serve and love the people that you're with. In my case, I eventually decided to serve a mission. I got called to Tokyo, Japan, and 2 years, and I had, obviously I had to learn the language. You go to a missionary training center for 2 months and learn the language, and then you're shipped out to the country, and it's just like, go get them, man. Like,
you learned Japanese in 2 months.
Yeah, I learned about that much Japanese in 2 months, and for the first 6 months, my mind was blown, But yeah, so I eventually learned Japanese, learned to absolutely love the people. And what's cool, yeah, it's one of the things I think is maybe not appreciated enough in the LDS culture is, there's 60,000 missionaries in the world, LDS missionaries, and they're in Africa, they're in Europe, they're in parts of China, Southeast Asia, America, Canada, South America, and all of them are doing the very same thing. They're learning the language, culture, and coming to love the people that they serve, which I think in today's world is an incredible, wonderful thing to teach kids. So anyway, I told the scouts that I wanted to serve a mission, and everything went quiet for probably 2 to 3 weeks, and then a handful of teams came back, Angels being one of them, White Sox, a few other teams, and they said, okay, well, if we let you serve a mission, we'll pay you a little bit less. We'll still draft you, but we'll pay you a little bit less, let you go on a mission. And then when you come back, you'll just start up. And the Angels were willing to do that. They took me as the 6th pick. I got paid a little less than, it's kind of funny. I'm like, why did this guy's like a really bad.
His agent's terrible.
And so, I got less than the guys that were taking 7, 8, 9, 10 or whatever it was, but for me, it was an incredible a show of good faith by the Angels, which, was a huge sacrifice to let me go for 2 years. And yeah, so I went to Tokyo, came back, and was about, 15, 20 pounds lighter and completely out of shape. And
did you do any baseball activity in that 2 years?
None whatsoever. I mean, I went out maybe once or twice and tried to throw a ball around on a field, and had a couple like little media related things that I did, but no, like nothing.
Did you ever have any worries, like say a year and a half into it or so, when you're knowing you haven't participated in baseball, were there any thoughts like, dude, what if I've lost all my skill? Anything like that come up for you?
That's such a great question, because the world is like, even missions and missionaries, it's different now than it was back then. And I think that they have a lot more freedom and more ability to do certain things, stay mentally sharp, like at least mentally checked in and physically more checked in. But back then I was pretty naive and didn't really maybe understand all of the implications of how it would affect my career. I hear it all the time, with particularly with BYU football. You always hear sports commentators talking about their age. Oh, we got 24-year-old men out here, and I'm like, bro, you don't even get it. And it's not even so much what so many people don't understand is you're not only losing the 2 years that you're gone, but depending on where the season falls over that 2 years, you may lose 3, right? Yeah. And not only that, but you lose all of the physical edge. You're not lifting weights, you're not training, at least back then I wasn't. But the real challenge is you go from being at the very tip top of your game, where you're just mentally sharp and you have that competitive edge where you just feel and know that you can dominate at what you do, to preaching about mercy and repentance and love and charity, which are not detrimental to you, but it's just by the time you get back in, because you haven't been playing and kept and built that during some of those formative years, it's catch up. And it took me a year and a half, I would say, before physically I was even close to the person that I was before. And in baseball, so the age thing is no advantage. And especially in baseball, it's an extreme disadvantage, as you know, Chad. Like, that's why we have issues of people fudging on their birth certificates and things like that in the past. But if you're if I was, I came back and I was a 21-year-old rookie with the baseball equivalency of an 18-year-old. Well, by the time I'm 26 and I've got the baseball equivalency of a 22, 23-year-old, the team's going to go with the 23-year-old, right? Like all things being equal, they're going to go with the guy that's got 2 to 3 years less age and an equivalent amount of experience. So I would never change the decision that I made. My mission did more for me as an individual and in propelling my life forward from that point than baseball ever could. But you definitely have those things that you have to take into consideration, which I don't know that I can.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you made basically a pact with God at the age of 15 after a horrific injury, and a lot of kudos to you that you stuck with that plan. And so you get drafted 94, you don't get back to pro ball till what, 96, 97? Is that about right?
96 first season, yeah.
Yeah, so you start over. So I want to explain that. So McKay was, how, if I were to describe you, so center fielder, can run with anybody, as fast as anybody, an 80 on the speed scale, just an 80 athlete, can really do everything on the field. How did the minor leagues go for you once you got back into the game?
Good question. So I didn't have, so again, going back to that transition, coming back off my mission, my swing needed serious work. And I think it would have been better had I come directly out of high school and just began playing. But transitioning from an aluminum bat to a wood bat on top of it, my swing needed a lot of work. I could hit the ball up the field and drive it, but for a little dude, I mean, I'm not a big guy. I'm 185 pounds, but I like to drive the ball kind of into the gaps. When I came back, the White Sox, they were teaching Charlie Lau style of hitting, which was totally different than my mindset and how I understood hitting.
Can you describe that for us? What is the Charlie Lau style of hitting?
Yeah, it's a little bit, as kids, the age old saying when we were growing up was probably squash the bug type of thing, like, loading on your back foot and not getting stuck back there, but rotating off of your back foot and kind of, and driving the ball. Whereas Charlie Lau, it was more of a transition off of your back to your front foot, and even in some cases picking up your back foot off the ground at the point of contact, which is really, if you watch Frank Thomas, how he transitioned in his swing and is able to even lift up his back foot as he does it. I mean, it just works brilliantly for him. But for me, I was not accustomed to doing that. And they wanted me to play like Ichiro, right? Like they're like, Mac, you can fly and you're a lefty, like hit the ball to the left side of the field and just go.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, but I'm pretty good at, like, I was naturally probably a pull hitter. And I could hit the gaps, the left center gap, and hit the ball the other way. I just didn't do it. I needed work on that part of the game without question. And to try to shift my mindset completely to doing it that way exclusively, I was beating myself up. Like, I was literally teaching myself how to get beat. I was constantly being jammed, constantly,
That style is a little bit like you're kind of jumping into the ball, right? You're not, stepping and rotating as more of a linear with your stride than rotating. You're just you're balanced, whatever, then you just go.
Right.
And then your head's moving that far, right?
Yeah. And I couldn't, like, the head movement was throwing me off and I was, speeding up the ball because I'm moving into it, jamming myself all the time. And I literally cut the field in half and was like, don't even, like, I felt like it was a sin to pull the ball. I would cut the field in half and try to force everything to the left side of the field. And it just, it was messing with my head. And I had a really hard time with that adjustment. And in today's game, they'd be like, what are you doing? Like, why would you want to do that? And I was never, I would have never been launching the ball out of the park you did, or like other guys. But I think in today's game, it would have suited the way that I my like the way that I was raised hitting a little bit better than it did back then. But that transition of going to a wood bat and having to learn how to do that at the same time, trying to get back into shape, dealing with injuries as I was going through that was hard. I'd never been thrown out at second base in my life. And then, all of a sudden I'm like getting thrown out at second base. I'm like, what's going on?
I've lost it all. What's happening?
The transition, it would have been interesting to see what the transition may have been like without a mission, but, or what it would have been like had I gone like maybe straight to LA where I was with Jack Clark. And when I was with Jack, he was like, Mac, like, this is what you're good at, do that. And it just, it worked better with my own philosophy and my own swing. And as you know, so much of that, professional baseball is so funny, right? It's like being in the right place at the right time with the right people.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that style of hitting worked well for me. So
yeah. And so you started that minor league career struggling, trying to figure out your swing. Like we're all trying to figure that out, and given information sometimes that just is the complete opposite. I had Jack Clark too when I was with the Dodgers. And I kind of, when I became a Dodger, I talked to him about bat path, and getting there, getting on plane, all that stuff. And what does that look like? And he was, Jack Clark's a big dude. And he was just like, just hit down and threw on the ball, dude, back thing, kind of like the old school coaches. Excuse me. Like all the old school coaches talk about. And now it's a little bit different, so it's hard for hitters to kind of figure out.
That's true.
What do I do? And I think that's great advice. Like, do what you've always done. Like you'll make adjustments along the way. But did you ever feel like, that's interesting. You said you cut half the field, so then you thought it's a sin if I pull a ball, because. And so that's just fascinating to me that you went through probably, would you say, a couple years of trying to figure out that approach?
Oh yeah, it took me, it was something that stuck with me my entire career. I would think psychologically, this idea I had to be hitting the ball to the left side of the field and running. And, I didn't always cut the entire field in half, but early on, I really mentally, I didn't realize that I was completely doing it, but yeah, I did. And to your point, philosophies on hitting change, but the advantage, it's wonderful. The kids have such an advantage now over what we had when we played, in part because you can video everything. You can dissect everything. Having YouTube, having access to all of the great hitters and watching all of them. You can look at a guy like Nolan Arenado and be like, yeah, that is how I either want to hit or how I do hit. Or you may look at a guy like Bellinger and be like, nope, this is more of what my swing is, and figure out the nuances between those and what type of hitter you want to be. We didn't have access to that kind of technology, and the technology, I feel like, has changed things dramatically.
Yeah, we had VHS tape that maybe you could see from the front side and you don't know what you're doing, right? Yeah, that's cool. So you start to you start to become a top prospect, right? You start to get back on your way, the first round draft pick, like he's back, he's ready to roll. And then you get the call to the big leagues. What was your big league call up like?
So the first time I'd made the big league team was, so my first full season was 1997. 98, I played about a half a season. I broke my thumb, played a half a season. And then coming out of spring the next year, I made the big league team.
And this is not with the Angels at this point, is it?
White Sox, yeah. So as a sidebar, I went on my mission. The Angels were in the middle of a pennant race, and I got traded the first year of my mission for Abbott. And I don't know if you remember Jim, but so I got traded to the White Sox. And so when I came back, I just reported straight to the White Sox. So yeah, came up through the White Sox organization. So I had, I actually made the team, all things considered, pretty quickly. It was about a year and a half or so of minor league ball before I made the big league club. but I don't think I was, admittedly, I wasn't ready at all. And, um, and so, I was used, and then my experience with the White Sox was a little bit of a challenge because, um, they would oftentimes, the way that they broke me in was rough. Like they would use me for base stealing, a defensive replacement, and,
In the big leagues.
huh?
This
In
is
the
it.
big,
So you're like the fourth, fifth outfielder.
yes, yep, yep. The first little bit I started, I was, I led off. Um, the first time I got called up, if I remember correctly, I was leading off, and, played for a little bit, got sent down, and then, went through it like so many minor league kids do, where they go up and come back down. But when I was playing, a lot of the time they were using me as like a fourth outfielder, a defensive replacement, a base stealer. And when you're breaking in, and just a challenge because, I mean, Harold Baines, right? Like I would get one at bat every 3 games against, you know, Mariano Rivera or something like that. And, it's just like, it's hard to string, you want to string when you're breaking in, you'd like him to be like, look, man, we're going to give you like 150 at bats, 200 at bats, and like, just go work it out,
Let you go. Yeah.
let you go. But some of that is just what team you're with, and if where they're at and how they're competing in their division and stuff like that. And I don't know that they, in my situation, they had Ray Durham at second base, who was a great leadoff hitter.
Yep.
And was under a contract for, big contract. And with me in center field, I think that they always felt like they probably needed more power out of that position, needed speed and defense and other things. So it just, the White Sox was never a really wonderful fit, I don't think.
Yeah, it's no doubt. As a scout, we would always, as we were trying to figure out, say if we were scouting you in high school and we're putting all those tools together, right? So we would look at like, oh yeah, he plays center field, can do all the tools are there, right? And then it's all, is he going to hit enough? It's always that hit tool, right? Is he going to hit enough to fill that leadoff spot, or is he just more of a 8 or 9 hitter, but can play amazing defense? Or if he doesn't fit that mold, then we kind of go into, well, he's more of a fourth or fifth outfielder.
Yeah.
Doing that, a defensive replacement. That's what I became too. When I got traded from the Pirates, I went to the Cubs, who had Moises Alou left, Corey Patterson and in center, and Sammy Sosa in right. And so, and then we had like Roosevelt Brown, great, could probably start for a couple of teams at the big league level. So Rosie and I are just chilling on the bench, like, oh, we're up by 10 runs. Hermansen, go play right for Sammy Sosa. So you get your one at bat, right? And it's hard. You're trying to stay loose during the game. And you and I, being high draft picks, we played in every single game our whole lives, right? We never had to sit the bench. And then you get into that mold at the highest level. It's certainly a huge adjustment.
Sorry, go ahead, Chad.
No, but go ahead.
Well, I was just, it's the psychological adjustment it's massive. And if you get, and that's where I talk about like being just in the right place at the right time. I was a pure leadoff guy like that. That was because I wasn't, I think had I probably stuck with the swing that I had, I may have hit, I would have hit for a lot more power, but never enough to be someone that's going to be a corner or going to fill the role of a 3, 4, 5 spot. It's never going to happen. And so you're right. I mean, what you describe is exactly right. If you've got somebody that's a leadoff guy and they're under contract for a long period of time, then you really slide down into that spot where, okay, do we, is he a 7, 8, 9 batter or is he a fourth outfielder if we need somebody in center field that's going to hit for more power or do something like that. Interesting, those dynamics. When you're, and I get it, right? Like when you're a GM and a manager and you're fielding a team, you've got to work out all of those. You're looking at the bigger picture. But to go like, in fact, I used to talk to Harold Baines, or even like Hansen, who was with the Dodgers, or some of these guys who were almost career DH hitters. Like Harold, he spent 20 years being a starter and had, years and years of experience being a starter, and then moved way into learning how to become an effective DH. Breaking in as a DH is a totally different ball game.
Right.
And it really, like you said, you're cold the entire game, especially playing in a place like Chicago or Pittsburgh, where it's like literally you're starting the year in snow sometimes. Right. And keeping your body warm, learning how to be back in the cages and hitting and staying dialed in, and then knowing that, look, I got one at bat. Like as a leadoff hitter, my first at bat of the game, I'm taking the first pitch probably 70% of the time, maybe 60% of the time. And then, but when you're DHing, like you can't afford to let one good pitch go, because you're facing a guy who has 2 to 3 really, really good, like at least 2 dominant pitches in the bigs, right? Like he's going to have a nasty fastball and he's going to have some out pitch. And if you don't get in there and take advantage of that early, the likelihood of you getting a hit goes down. So it's just learning that role and how to adjust to it takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious as to, I think you told me, so when we kind of first officially met, I had just gotten married to Bracken and she was still in school and she started at BYU. So my off season for 2 off seasons became Provo, Utah.
Right.
And my experience coming from Vegas, cold winters. And so you and I started working out together at the Smith Fieldhouse at BYU. Had guys like Troy Farnsworth and Troy McNaughton, and Wally Joyner came around. So we had this really good group of guys that we worked out with. And you told me a story one time, because now that you're with the White Sox, you told me a story about, I think it was Tony Phillips. It was kind of harping on you a little bit about being the missionary return. Do you remember that story? Tell us about that.
Oh yeah, dude, Tony. Tony would remember it. I remember it like it was almost yesterday, because he was, when you come, as you know, like when you enter into an organization, like you walk into a clubhouse and you like walk into a clubhouse with a bunch of dudes that you've been collecting baseball cards of like since you were a kid, right? Like
had some big name, Frank Thomas, all those guys, right? Harold Baines, come on.
Yeah, we big name. We had some, Albert Bell was there, Robin Ventura, Harold Baines, like you said, and Frank. We had some big names, and Tony was one of them. I knew Tony, watched him when I was a kid, just because he was kind of a leadoff guy too, and was basically an understudy to Ricky Henderson for forever. And but his personality was so big, it just like filled the entire clubhouse. He was awesome. He was awesome. But I didn't know anybody when I first showed up, like not boo. And was at, big league spring training and was completely out of shape, and, just came back so wet behind the ears. And this was, I don't know, it was a whole new world for me. So I remember one experience where Terry Bevington was the manager, and he's like, okay, let's get everybody out, and, stretching, doing your own thing. And we started with infield, outfield. And I think he was just like kind of testing all of the new guys, trying to get a feel for all of the new players they had in camp. And so I was out in center field. Mike Cameron was with me in center. Albert was in left, and Tony was in right field. And, the rest of the infield is all filled out with the guys that But so we're out in center field, they're hitting balls and everyone's fielding, throwing, and, doing the best they can to show off for the new manager and everything. And all of a sudden I hear out in right field, "Hey, Mo Man." And I'm all, what? Like, and he repeats, "Mo Man." And I'm like, is he talking? What does he say? And Mike Cameron's like, "Hey, Christensen, I think he's talking to you." I learned, he goes, "Hey, Christensen, you're Mormon, ain't you?" And I'm like, yeah. I mean, he's yelling across the field. So everyone, and I'm like, "Yeah, Tony, I'm Mormon." It's like, "Good. Tell the missionaries to stop coming by my house every time I'm trying to sleep." Just like, everybody fell out. Frank was like, "He said Mo Man." Everyone thought that was hilarious. And it was like a bad first day at school, right? I was embarrassed. And yeah, anyway, he thought that was classic and funny. And so right after that, actually, Bevington, I was up, Bevington hit some deep ball into like like deep left center field. And I'm like, bro, I don't care where this ball is. I'm catching it. Like I'm catching the ball. So I just truck after it, dive and catch the ball, get up and throw a strike to third base. And he's all, "Hoo-wee, Mo man, you make a catch like that, missionaries can come by my door anytime." He was funny. After that, it was kind of cool because after that, every time I saw him, he still called me, Mo man. And then Frank started calling me Mo man.
Yeah.
But he was good to me. Like he would wrap his arms around me and coach me up. And I didn't get to know him well, but he was just good to
me. Oh, did I lose you there? There we go.
Yeah.
That story is incredible. Did Tony pass away? Did he pass away a little while?
I don't know. Did he?
Oh man, I have to look that up. I should have looked that up before our call. I think he might have.
Really?
Yeah, I'll check that out. But man, those are incredible stories. And so you ended up playing with the White Sox, the Dodgers, and is it the Mets at the big league level?
Yep.
Is that right? And then what would you say was your best experience of the big leagues?
Oh, LA by far. I mean, I really loved the people in the White Sox organization. In fact, last year or the year before, I went down to spring training with my boys, and a couple of my friends were there. Aaron Rowand was coaching at the time. I don't know if he's actually still there or not. Gellinger, Thompson. I mean, there's just so many guys that are still there from when I played, which is mind blowing. And I showed up and they were just warm and loving, and it's good. It's just good to see that and still connected to all those old guys. And I have my oldest son with me, Cole, and he loved it, right? Like just being able to get field and be around that. So the people within the organization I love them. And they were always, in terms of just their personalities and as people, they were always really good to me. But I just didn't quite fit within the scheme. When I got to LA, I finally got to start and play. And again, I was with Jack. And Jack, when you talk about like cutting the ball in half and sort of swinging down through the ball, it is a little different from what they talk about with launch angle and stuff with kids these days. But it resonated with me. It made sense to me, and I enjoyed that. The guys on the team, I really, really enjoyed the clubhouse in LA. And I was back in LA where we're playing in 70 degree weather. The surface was beautiful. It was like being at home, as you know.
Home. Yeah. You're home.
It's the familiarity, just, I don't know what it was, but I felt like I thrived more in that environment. And that was a good experience for me. And then, I got sent back over to the Mets and sort of back on the East Coast, and love the East Coast, love both those cities. I mean, how could you argue with New York, Chicago? But just felt more at home with LA.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed that too. I shared that same experience when I got to LA. I've told this before, but I was still in that really fifth outfielder, because we had Jeremy Burnitz, Ricky Henderson, Dave Roberts, and Sean Green and Brian Jordan.
Yeah.
And a mixture of all that. I'm like, how many outfielders do we have? And I'm like, I'm never going to play over here. But it was nice. The weather was amazing. Dodger Field. I think the surface of Dodger Stadium and Dodger Field was probably the best that I experienced, I would say. It was like you would think at the big leagues, like the ball doesn't snake, but I'm like, it snakes in a lot of spots at that level.
In fact, I remember going to Wrigley Field and I'm like, what? Like, what's going on with this place? Like, why destroyed? And it was bad weather and stuff like that. But man, that surface was rough when I was there. But LA was just pristine. I mean, it was like a putting green out there in the outfield.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's awesome, man. You played with 3 teams at the big league level. That's so cool. Do you ever feel like, because I felt this way, like, yeah, I played for like 4 teams at the big league level. I got this service time, but I was a first round pick. There were some high expectations with being that. Did you feel those expectations, and that, you didn't have, like, my thoughts, like, I didn't have that 10, 15 year big league career. where I'm set for life. You know, I
Yeah.
can take care of my family forever. What are your thoughts with that, with being a high pick?
Oh, there's no question, Chad. And I mean, I was talking to my son about this actually just the other day, and I went into professional baseball, I think, like I said, fairly naive, you know. Back when I was growing up, dude, we barely had ESPN. We had like 5 channels, and like trying to catch games of any sort, I was just outside playing, doing my thing, you know. And so I didn't truly grow up with this ideal of playing at the major league level. And maybe I didn't even quite understand it completely, you know, in the way that I should. But there's no doubt that once, you know, just being the competitors that we are, and once I was drafted, you want to be a Hall of Famer. That's the goal, right? Like, no, I'm going to play 15, 20 years in the league. And
No problem. This will be easy.
and, and so, no, of course, it didn't turn out the way that I expected it to. I retired early when I was 27. I think maybe I just turned 20, and reached a point where I just wasn't happy playing in the same. And I don't know that I ever genuinely loved it in the way that you have to love it in order to succeed at that level. And that was really one of, looking back, like in hindsight, I failed myself in that way. I didn't make the requisite sacrifices. I didn't put in the requisite. I mean, don't get me wrong, I worked my tail off. I worked hard. I was always the first guy in, tried to be the first guy in and the last one to leave. But I just didn't appreciate what it takes at that level, what a wonderful opportunity it truly is. And stupid things like in the off season, I wanted to be home with my family. I mean, Utah is literally no place to prepare for the season, like literally no place to, and you know this, like
here, right?
been in LA, I should have been in Florida. I should have been outside, hitting outside. I mean, you can't go from hitting in a cage to spring training and expect to have the ball do the things that, like, to see where the ball is. It's just not even remotely close. It's not the same.
Right.
I should have been playing more winter ball. There's a lot of things that I should have done better than I did to increase my opportunity and to become a better student. That's the other thing. I wasn't a student of the game in the way that I should have been. I remember on one occasion when we were playing Boston, I was with Chicago, and Manny Ramirez, who I just, even to this day, consider one of the best hitters I ever saw. I remember going in, and I got in early to the cages, and he was in there hitting off the tee by himself forever. And I should have studied those guys, picked everybody's brains, like adapted more of that learning and incorporated it into my own game than I did. And I relied maybe just too much on my own natural gifts and wasn't focused on the skills like I should have been. And like kids are today, you know?
Sure. Yeah. And it's really easy to pick ourselves apart that way, right? The
Right.
The should haves, right? We could go on and list all that out. And obviously it doesn't really serve us right now, but it's at least having the awareness, because I did the same thing. I'm like, I struggled with breaking balls. Did I do enough to, work on a breaking ball machine? Oh, we don't have a machine. Can we go get a machine so I can work on breaking balls? Little things like that can make a huge difference in that, what I preach to kids now. Like, if you have a weakness in your game, number one, you got to be aware of it, right? And then actually have the discipline to go put the time in to do it. And you don't have to take 1,000 swings every day. What if you just take 100? It's more consistency, I think, wins over taking 1,000 swings on a Monday and then not doing anything for a week. What if you just take 100 swings every day, really focused type work, and then get out of there, go hang out with your friends. So it's just interesting, right? Perspective as we get older. But that's what those experiences we get to share, like with your son. Is your son play? Tell us about your kids. Let's dive into that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've got 3 kids. My oldest is girl. She's graduates year, and then a 15-year-old boy, a 12-year-old boy, and both of them play football and play baseball. They're both really good athletes, different from each other in different ways, but both very, very good athletes. And yeah, we have kind of those same conversations, about the amount of hours that you put in and understanding your weakness and attacking it and trying to make it better. So
Yeah, I'm fascinated with every athlete I talk to, like yourself, that has kids now. The information that they're given at such early ages, like 8 to 12, like
mhm.
stuff that we would learn as professionals. We're teaching these kids at this age, and I'm like, are they getting it? Are they
Yeah,
actually taking it to heart? Because I don't know about you, but like growing up in Utah, I played all those. I did football, basketball, baseball. Could not wait for that next sport to come, right? Because
yeah,
but you're focused on football, then basketball, then baseball. But we just played, and I don't, maybe we're not giving the coaches at that time enough credit. But man, there's so many every almost just here in Vegas, for example. There's so many former big leaguers here, and
yeah.
almost all of them coach. They're either helping with the high school team, they have their own club ball team, and I'm like, God, these kids are lucky, and um, I don't know. I think it's just overlooked a little bit with how much information they're given. You just hope they're taking it to heart and they're applying it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it it's remarkable. Like you said, when I was a kid, my high school coach, most wonderful man ever. I don't know that I ever really got a lot of coaching. It was time he put in an endless amount of time with us, but it was sort of like you just went out and your athleticism took over and you sort of did what you did.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
right nowadays, my boys, for example, before games, they're on YouTube studying different players hitting. You've got YouTube drills that they can just pick up almost anywhere, and from a fielding standpoint. And if the kid is really willing to be a student of the game, and like you say, are they actually digesting the information and then implementing it? I think that's the hard thing to do with kids, just because there's a million other distractions, their phones, everything else.
oh, yeah,
But man, the access to information that they have is phenomenal, way more than what you or I think ever had.
yeah. And I wonder too, because I try to keep things really simple. I wonder if it's a lot of times too much information, where it's clouding their brains and their mental capacity to handle it all, and it just becomes confusing. So because if
Might say yes, probably.
yeah, well, I was talking to one of my partners the other day about putting together drills, for example, with this new organization I'm working with, and I'm like, I don't know about you, but I had like 3 drills I did off a tee. So it wasn't like now you could probably list 100 different drills that people do. I'm like, why do we need all these drills? Like that's a lot, you know.
Yeah, just overkill.
Overkill. Yeah. So, well, very good, man. This has been incredible. You have an amazing story, and I remember, um, kind of back to the church side of things. You had a video that was called the $1 Million Missionary that I actually bought. I purchased a Deseret book. That's kind of a bookstore that we buy a lot of books and tapes and things like that. With our faith, and you had a video, and I played it for my young men who were um, I think they were roughly high school age kids, but it was just an inspirational story because they're at the age where they were trying to figure out, do I just go to school? Do I want to go serve a mission? Do I want to get on with life? And so I know that probably helped a ton of people. So I just always admired your example, no matter what religion you are, and just your faith in God and your belief in Jesus Christ, as your savior. It's always been you've always stayed true to that, and I love you for that. I love your example and your family. But anything else that you want to share, maybe some last tips of advice, whether it's about life, about the game, and anything that you'd want to share.
Oh, that's good. You're so kind, Chad. I love you too, man. In fact, I remember when we were working out down at BYU, I remember thinking, that dude has a beautiful point. Like that swing, And it was, you did. It was just, and you had so many incredible tools that you got at your disposal. Um, so I've always admired you in that way, and also as a person. But I guess maybe I don't know that I have any parting wisdom or anything like that. But just to round out or close the loop on this discussion about baseball and professional sports versus the decision that I made to serve a mission. There's no doubt that I think that I don't think that there's any doubt that it probably had some impact on my career. But again, it's another, being a dad now and having my own boys and thinking about my own boys and the trajectory of their life going forward, and where I would like to see them be someday. I loved the game. I loved the game and everything that it gave me. But and even knowing that my mission probably in some ways negatively impacted my career, um, it impacted my life in such a way that I would never ever, not in 10 lifetimes, trade the experience that I had and go back and do anything differently. And especially in today's world where there's there's so many distractions. They've got so much on their plate. The world is pulling them in so many different directions. It's hard for them to. It's hard for kids, I think, nowadays to understand who they are and to have self-worth that comes from inside of them or from some other source other than what they're getting fed on social media, or the hype that comes with their jersey and everything else. And for LDS kids, for non-LDS kids, people that are even if you're not of any particular religious faith, I just think finding opportunities to serve other people, finding opportunities and that's what a mission did for me. It got myself outside of myself. It allowed me to see people of a different culture, of a different race, of different beliefs, and to get down deep into their lives, to love them, to serve them, and to teach them about Christ, like you talked about, and about the atonement of Christ and the blessings that come as a result from that. That type of personal, I almost hesitate to call it personal sacrifice, but that type of dedication to something outside of yourself. I would like to see them. It'd be wonderful if the world was more engaged in that, because not only does it help the people around you, your fellow men, but it helps develop who you are as an individual. You don't have to do it serving a mission. You can do it in your community. You can do it in a million other ways. And if I had any parting wisdom, I guess not wisdom, but any parting advice, I don't want to get away, thinking that's the advice I would give my own son and have given to my. So.
That's awesome, dude. Well, this has been incredible, man. Your stories are awesome. We could probably talk for hours about stories that we've gone through, and yeah.
I'm on through Vegas. We need to go grab some lunch or dinner and go hang out.
Absolutely. Well, McKay, man, this has been a pleasure. We'll definitely have to do it again. I know you're involved in real estate now. That's what you're doing for your career and paying the bills, doing all that stuff. Real job, real life stuff. So congrats with your success there. But again, thanks for coming on the show today. Appreciate you.
I love you, bud. Thanks.
Love you too, man. We'll talk to you later.
Later.
Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that conversation with McKay Christensen. What an amazing dude, right? He's just so laid back. One of the best athletes I've ever seen. It's kind of funny when you have a guy that's that humble, that just kind of talks in this calm, easy demeanor. But he has a great story. I know he's done a lot for other people. He's big into service. So hopefully you kind of took some of his story, can apply it to your life, and to just go help out other people. That's what really this is all about. Yeah, we're talking about baseball and the adversity and the mental game, but what about just love and compassion for our fellow man? So was really what I wanted to bring McKay on, and he brought it today. So McKay, thanks for coming on board, and we will see you in the next episode. Take care.